So let's get started with creating a function in here called toggle retweet. Or actually we can just call it retweet. So this is what we're going to be calling inside retweet action in here. And one mistake we made here that is actually we have already got this function in here has retweeted on the user model. So we can just go ahead and access that instead. So I'm going to go in here now and say auth use, and then has retweeted tweet. And in this case, it will go for the original tweet ID. And if that's the case, then it will just return it here. But we want to essentially start moving a lot of this over to this trait here so that this class doesn't get very cluttered. We want to break this down a bit. So we want to call this specifically create retweet. And I think we should have this as a public function, but we inside the create retweet, we actually just want to have the creating part. So we're just going to say this retweets create, and that's it. Because we already know the tweet here, we can just say tweet create retweet, because what we're doing now essentially is we're either getting the tweet or the original tweet, depending on which one we're clicking at. So that's simplifying it a bit. But in here, we also want to have a function called notify user of tweets. And this should actually be a private function because at the end of the day, we always want to notify the user regardless of anything. And for this, we only want to have this notification here, but we also want to essentially broadcast it in here. We could probably come up with a better name for this, but if we go ahead and pass through tweet here, then we can just say this notify user of tweet and pass through the tweet in here. Just like that. And now we're essentially inside retweet action here, and we have all of these things sort of through in here. So we now have it a bit tidier as well. And we're creating the retweet here, which also notifies the user of this retweet. And at the same time, we can then go ahead and say inside this has retweets function, create a private function delete retweet. And this should be public. And in this case, we just want to go ahead, add in this part here. So what we're doing is we're getting the tweet that we essentially are calling in here. So if we go back into retweet action, we can just say this tweet delete retweet. Let's have the private functions bottom here as well, just for consistency. And again, if we look in here, we can see that we also get it in here. So if we go back here, you can see that we are, when we're undoing this, we're essentially calling this retweets getting the information here, and then we're calling the delete tweet afterwards. So we should actually call this where we are doing this delete tweet, which we're doing inside timeline. And then we're removing it from there. And currently we're not actually doing it here, so that's probably one of the issues we're encountering here. So what I want to essentially go ahead and do is I want to set retweet to this tweet. And then we just want to go ahead and make sure that we, in this case, we dispatch these events here, delete the tweet, and after this is a dispatch, we want to say retweet, delete retweet. And we can just do that in here. In here, we just pass through a tweet. And then we go through in here and say tweet, delete.